Bangalore, which is also renamed as IACTA Bangalore chapter. And I'm grateful to the office bearers of the FCA, that is the Forum of Cardiac Anesthesiologists, for providing this platform for the advancement of education and resulting in better patient care. Once you know better, we can take care of the patient better. That's the whole intention. So with that few introductory words, I request Dr. Pooja Natarajan to start the presentation. The talk time is exactly 30 minutes. After that, there's a 15-minute discussion time. So feel free to ask questions or give comments. Thank you so much. Dr. Pooja Natarajan.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining on a Sunday morning. So let's talk on a very important ventricle. That's RV. Also, it's also called as the forgotten ventricle. But as a cardiac anesthesiologist, although the first ventricle, if anyone has been asked that which is the most important ventricle, everybody will say the LV. But as you start working in cardiac, you'll realize RV is equally important. So let's begin. My slideshow is visible. I'm going to switch off my camera.
Your slides are visible, but it is not slideshow as of now.
Is it okay, sir?
Yes, now it's good.
Okay, sir. Okay. I have no conflict of interest. Well, let's go to the basics. Anatomy of RV. It's a non-geometrical, asymmetric, crescent-shaped chamber. It is thin-walled as compared to LV. So it has inflow part, which is heavily trabeculated, outflow, which is a corner smooth part, and the apical portion, which ends as a pulmonary valve. It has muscular bands, 4 distinct structures to name: parietal band, crista supraventricularis, septal band, and the moderator band. So it has the free wall, the IVS, and the apex, and the lateral can be divided as the base, mid, apex, and the medial is the interventricular septum, and the inferior part is the diaphragm. It has 3 papillary muscles, the third one being the series of small septal capillaries. That's what it is. Am I clear, sir? Rajiv?
Yeah, it's clear as of now.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
So we'll go for the to the coronary supplies of RV. The major being the acute marginal, which is a branch of right coronary artery, and although in 10% when there's left dominant circulation, we can have the posterior descending artery from the LAD supplying the RV, and the other from the coronal branches. RV function can be divided as 3 main movements. That is the longitudinal shortening of papillary muscle and longitudinal muscle of the free wall. LV plays a very important role in the septal movement, and also circular muscles, which forms like a bellow and helps in pumping. RV ejection is highly coupled to the pulmonary vasculature, and hence it is inverse. It is an inverse relationship with the RVEF as opposed to the pulmonary artery pressures. RV and LV are always connected in series, and RV tolerates volume overload better than LV. So in RV dysfunction, we see that it can be really severe when the EF can get down to almost 10%. Most important thing to remember is RV is protected from ischemia by lower oxygen requirement because of less muscle mass. Coronary perfusion happens to the entire cardiac cycle, and also there's a component of diffusion of oxygen. Now let's look at the differences, RV and LV. So the EF compared is to LV is a little on the lower side, to call it normal, 40 to 45. The thickness is just 2 to 5 as opposed to 7 to 11 of LV. End diastolic volume, this is very important, of RV is more than LV. And RV pressures are around 25 as opposed to 130 in LV. In RV, we measure the PVR, and in LV, we measure the SVR. So RV is the volume is larger, Mass is 1/6 of LV and RVEF is lower than LV. So RV acts as a volume pump, whereas LV is a pressure pump. It has bellow-like movement. This has twisting and rotation-like movement. And papillary muscles are 3 in number, whereas in LV it is 2. Moderator band is present. Trabeculation is very heavy in RV. And apical displacement of AV valve is this also a very important thing of the RV. And the shape is triangular as compared to elliptical of LV. And usually the LV forms the apex, but in RV dilatation, RV can form the apex. Length is 2/3 of LV. So we have to know about ventricular interdependence. So it is more exaggerated in conditions like tamponade and constrictive pericarditis, that is respiratory motions, movements and inflow velocities in tricuspid valve is more exaggerated. And RV volume overload and pressure overload, there's a difference in RV overload, volume overload, there is septal flattening, whereas in pressure overload, you can see a S-shaped septum. This is another important index called the eccentricity index, which is based on the LV diameters. So in both the conditions, the ED and ES will be more than 1. So let's look at the TE views. So we can assess the RV eyeballing in modified mid-esophageal 4-chamber view, where we can concentrate on the RA and RV, in the RV mid-esophageal RV inflow-outflow view, and in the long axis view. And also in the transgastric views, where we see the RV basal view, and in the modified deep transgastric view, we can see the RA and LA, and transgastric RV inflow-outflow view, where we can see again the RA and RV, and in the modified transgastric basal short axis view, we can see the entire tricuspid leaflets. I'll show you the move. So this on the left hand side is the 4-chamber view with the modified component looking at the RA and RV, and the right side we have the modified bicaval view, where we can look at the tricuspid valve. In the next, here we have the right side, we have the RV inflow outflow view, and in the left side we have the pulmonary artery, that is the ascending aorta short axis view, where we can see the dilated pulmonary artery. This is the right side is the transgastric RV inflow outflow view. Just a second, I'll just make it low. It's okay. Where we can see the tricuspid valve, and left side we can see the deep transgastric RV and RA view. Again, here on the right side we can see the transgastric RV inflow outflow view, where we can see the entire RV inflow outflow, and on the left side we can concentrate on the pulmonary artery, which is seen here. Now we look at each component. RV wall hypertrophy, it is called if it is more than 10 mm, and we measure it here in the 4-chamber, and RV measurements are done in this way in the 4-chamber and the RV inflow outflow view, and these are the normal values. Anything more than 39 in the basal is called severe, and basal apex length of more than 92 is called severe enlargement. In the global RV dilatation, we can look as pressure overload or volume overload conditions as mentioned here, and we can differentiate. So these are the end diastolic area and systolic area, the cutoff in men and women. So usually the RV area, if it is 60% of LV area, it is called as mild enlargement. So how do we assess the global RV systolic function? It is very challenging because of the non-geometric shape and loading conditions. 3D is always more reliable than 2D for RV assessment. Let's look at the different components of RV systolic function. We can divide it as mentioned here. So let's go to each component. And this is again another classification, and I will walk you through each one of them. So let's go the fractional area change. This is to remember, this is the most important thing which we look at 2D, more important than EF. EF may not be reliable, but FAC is reliable. So this is how we calculate the FAC, and EF we do by the Simpson method, and this is the formula where we calculate end diastolic volume minus end systolic volume divided by end diastolic volume. Next, we look at the dPdt. So how do we do this? If there is a TR jet, we put the Doppler CW, and then at 0.5 and 2 meter per second, the difference we'll take it and we divide the time interval by 15. So if it is more than 400, it's normal. If it's less than 400, it is abnormal. Next is the TAPSE. TAPSE is invalid in presence of any RWMA in RV infarction. So we measure it preferably in the transgastric view, and anything less than 17 is considered abnormal. For example, here, if you don't get the deep transgastric RV inflow outflow view, you can go for the deep transgastric view. Next is the S prime velocity. This, how do we calculate? This is used using the TDI. So we press the TDI button, focus on the lateral wall, and then we take the S prime velocity. So anything less than 9.5 is considered abnormal. Next is called the right index of myocardial perfusion. So this has to be done in 2 separate cardiac cycles on TE, but ideally prefer the single cycle because it is difficult to measure in a single cycle. We do it in 2 separate cycles. So how do we go about it? We look at the tricuspid inflow by putting the pulse wave Doppler. We measure the distance as mentioned in the yellow arrow, distance between E and A. And then we go to the pulmonary outflow. In the preferably in the deep transgastric view, we can get a good alignment. You calculate the ejection time. So here, according to the formula, we do A minus B by B. So we get a value which is less than 0.4 is normal value, and in tissue Doppler, if you're doing less than 0.5 is the normal value. Next, we'll go for the RV diastolic function. As it is almost as same as the LV diastolic function, but here we look at the hepatic vein flow and the transtricuspid Doppler flow. So we look at the prominent hepatic flow reversal at systole in patient with decreased RV compliance. So this is how we go about, and we should always correlate with the ECG findings. So S wave, D wave and V wave. We have to keep the ECG and then look into it. Similar to LV function, if it is less than 0.8, it's called impaired relaxation, and restrictive, it's more than 2. And hepatic venous flow, if it is reverse, S is reversed, it is called as the restrictive filling. Next, right atrial pressure calculation. This is very important to calculate the pulmonary artery systolic pressure. So what do? We put a continuous wave Doppler in the tricuspid valve, on the tricuspid valve, and then also we look at the right atrial pressure with this, that is the CVP. So there are multiple calculations which we can do, like we can calculate on echo PASP, which is almost equivalent to RVSP if there's no pulmonary stenosis. Pulmonary artery mean pressure we can calculate with the pulmonary insufficiency, that is regurgitation value, and also the diastolic pressure with the late pulmonary regurgitation flows as mentioned in this figure. So in the modified, again, if there is no alignment in the 4-chamber, we can go for the modified Bickel view because the alignment of the Doppler is better. So here in this case, we have a 14 plus a CVP of 18, that will give us a 63 PASP. Next, RAP can also be calculated based on the IVC collapsibility index in spontaneous ventilation, and mechanical ventilated patients, it's the distensibility index. So anything more than 12, you can give volume. Next, how do we calculate the cardiac output of RV? So we have to use the stroke volume formula. So area we'll calculate by the diameter. Diameter, we go for the ascending aorta, mid-esophageal, ascending aorta short axis view. We look at the diameter of the MPA. And then VTI by any of the deep transgastric view, or here, if we get here in this same view, mid-esophageal ascending aorta short axis view, we can calculate. So normal will be 94 plus or minus 15. So the other things which we can calculate on echo are the pulmonary vascular resistance. So the velocity of the TR jet and the VTA of RVOT multiplied by 10 plus 0.16. So anything which is more than 0.27, we can consider PVR of more than 14 Woods. So this is how we can assume. Next is the propagation velocity. So how do we calculate this? So we put the Doppler, and then we look at the flows. So anything around 4 centimeter entering into the RV, we look at the flows, and then anything which is more than 18 centimeter, we consider the PVR as 6, and more than 20 centimeter we considered as less than 2 Wood unit. So the other ways we can assess RVEFF is 3D. Obvious, the TomTech imaging is the latest, and it is very reliable assessing the global RV function. It is also validated against the MRI, which is the gold standard. So this is how it looks like. Then we can do the global longitudinal strain. In the global longitudinal strain, we calculate the strain pattern, and anything normal is more than 29. So anything less than 20 is called as abnormal function. So these are my references. Thank you.
Thank you, Pooja, for that quick presentation.
Thanks.
In the last close to 20 minutes, what Pooja has done is she mentioned about coronary arterial supply to the right ventricle, 3 times of movement in the RV contractions. She mentioned something about RV dysfunction, and then she did mention that apical placement of the septal leaflet of the tricuspid valve is an important feature for identification of right ventricle. And then she went on to measurement of right ventricular function. She first mentioned about systolic function, then she went into diastolic function, and then she also mentioned about advanced techniques. I think it was a quick presentation. That's good. So we have enough time for discussion. I see Sanjeevani Namdar, Arup Ratan, Vinayak Desurkar, and Suken Shetty in the group. So may I invite comments from them, and then we'll open the thing for questions. Dr. Sanjeevani Namdar, are you there? Dr. Arup Ratan?
Hello, good morning.
Yeah, Sanjeevani, yeah, tell me.
Pooja, it was very crisp and nice, and Dr. Muralidhar, you concluded it very well. I just once that Pooja told that RV hypertrophy is 10 millimeter, which is very large. It is, as far as my knowledge goes, it is 5 mm. More than 5 mm is
Yes.
RV.
I think so, yeah.
10 mm is too big.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
that is classified as severe, more than 10. Anything more than 5, we call it as hypertrophy. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. 10 is for left ventricle.
Another thing is how to calculate pulmonary artery diastolic pressure by echo, if you can.
Should I share it, ma'am?
Yes. That is very important because rather than systolic pulmonary artery pressure, mean pressure is taken as hallmark of severity.
Yes, yes. Mean pulmonary artery pressure is in the definition for pulmonary hypertension, not systolic, not diastolic. So mean pulmonary artery pressure is more important when we look at when we want to define the pulmonary arterial hypertension.
Because systolic can change with any activity, little bit of exercise. If the patient is excited,
Yes.
it can go increase with any minor variation. So it is mean which is important.
Yes.
Yes. Mean is more. That's right. The point is well taken.
And is with this heart transplant, what change happens in RV?
Couldn't get the question. Can you repeat it?
What is the change in RV function after heart transplantation?
Heart transplantation.
Yes.
Yeah.
So after heart transplantation, ma'am, because there could be a smaller heart for a bigger mediastinum, or a bigger heart for the smaller mediastinum. So these are the two components which can happen because of mismatch of the heart volume. So what can happen is, if it is a bigger heart, then the pump function is good. But if it's a smaller heart against a bigger size of the patient, then there could be some kind of difficulty for the RV to cope up and pump. So there can be some amount of RV dysfunction which can happen. So we always keep agents to support the RV. For example, we can use an inhaled nitric oxide, or we can use milrinone or dopamine, or also we can use an RVAD for RV support if it's only RV dysfunction.
What I wanted to ask is which function, whether it is longitudinal, bellows, or which function is reduced after after heart transplantation?
I'm not sure about which specific
We can ask
function, but I feel
Arun is there.
Yeah,
I can highlight. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
mostly the longitudinal function,
yeah.
which is affected after heart transplant, and not after heart transplant, but after each time we open the pericardium.
Right.
Because the pericardium has significant contribution for the RV function, and that's
Yes.
why after any pericardiectomy, once we open the pericardium, the TAPSE becomes unreliable.
Yes.
So it's mostly the longitudinal function, but at the same time, after heart transplant, RV diastolic dysfunction is very common. So it's not only the systolic function, but also the diastolic function, because the heart cavity is obviously is bigger than the new heart. So the right heart gets a lot of space. The heart gets a lot of space, and it kind of floats in the pericardial cavity. So there will be some degree of RV diastolic dysfunction, and and also size mismatch and all these things.
Yes. And also I would like to add in artificial hearts like LVAD, the RV plays a very important role. So the septum contributes quite a lot, and we have to keep this in mind, that the RV outflow is contributing. So we have to always maintain the RV function and look at the PVR components in especially a patient with LVAD. Only the left ventricular is being supported there.
Yeah. I just want to slight correction will be needed. We cannot say it's artificial heart. It's a left ventricular
support
device. Assist device. In such cases, the RV function is of vital importance. In fact, as many as 30 patients who have LVADs may develop right ventricular dysfunction. So the monitoring of right ventricular function becomes very vital in these patients. Ratan, any more comments you want to make?
No.
Arup Ratan.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Actually, I'm quite happy that she finished in 15-20 minutes, so we have enough time to take questions from the students. I'm really looking forward to that how the students and fellows, what questions they have in their mind, and
we
I'll
will.
be very happy.
Yes, we'll do that. And Dr. Vinayak Desurkar is there. Dr. Vinayak, do you want to say something? Do you want to add anything which is vital, which has not been mentioned?
No, not at the moment, because I joined bit slightly late
Right.
and she was too quick to finish it off. So.
Dr. Murlidhar, can I ask?
Absolutely.
See, Pooja, is the severity of pulmonary hypertension, does it correlate with RV function?
Need not, ma'am. No. It's basically on the, it can be pre-capillary or post-capillary. So RV function as such may not be very much reliable. Yeah.
So what I wanted to ask is, if the pulmonary hypertension is severe, would
Yes.
you say RV is not functioning?
That's what, ma'am. It's difficult to comment. Why? Because RV dysfunction will invariably set in a case of pulmonary hypertension case. So the RV may not be able to generate, like we are looking at PASP, RV may not be able to generate a TR where we calculate the PASP and the CVP. So it may not be reliable.
I will comment on this, and then we will also ask Vinayak and Rupratan and Suken Shetty if they want to say something. My comment on this question will be how quickly the pulmonary hypertension developed. Is it acute or chronic? And then second factor will be how the right ventricle is adapted to take the pressure overload. These two factors will influence how the RV is going to behave in the face of severe pulmonary hypertension. If it is the acute increase in pulmonary hypertension, for example, which happens in pulmonary embolism, acute pulmonary embolism, RV is certainly going to get dilated and fail. Whereas if it's a chronic process, for example, in a left-sided heart disease or in a congenital heart disease, where the right ventricle is affected in a very gradual and slow way, the right ventricle may compensate by hypertrophy, the valve getting hypertrophied and keeping the right ventricular output reasonably okay. So it depends upon, to my mind, it depends upon. Sorry. It depends upon the acuteness and the adaptability of the right ventricle. In general, right ventricle will not tolerate the pressure overload. With these comments, I'll request Vinayak and Arupratan and Suken probably to comment on this.
No, I agree with you, Dr. Murli, because that's how the whole RV function is. That's what we define as the volume
Right.
overload or the
Right.
pressure overload. So any acute insults are disastrous, as you said, but chronic insults are tolerated very nicely by RV, and that's why probably people can survive for a long time till it fails when it dilates too much.
Right. Arup, do you want to say something on this issue?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that in only acute situation, the RV, the PSC split pressure will increase at the same time RV can be down. But
Right.
in that case, the RV will not be dilated. That's probably the only thing that will happen. But in chronic pulmonary hypertension, there will be hypertrophy. RV hypertrophy is markedly prominent. So if you see a heart with a severe pulmonary hypertension or with some degree of dysfunction, with some hypertrophy of the RV, that means the thing is chronic. But the PSP essentially does not correlate with the severity of the RV function. Maybe it will affect more RV diastolic dysfunction than the RV systolic dysfunction in chronic cases.
Yes.
But in acute cases, mostly the systolic function will be affected rather than the diastolic function, and RV size will be it will be acutely dilated. As you can, it's a thin RV, acutely dilated, severe dysfunction in case of as you mentioned with a embolus or something.
Do you think the Frank-Starling law is applicable to right ventricle as much as it is applicable to the left ventricle?
No, not too much. It's applicable to the RV, but not too much as compared to the LV, because because of the character of the RV, its musculature, it's a very thin chamber. It's basically a passive chamber. It contracts less as compared to LV. So it's kind of passive conduit. So it's not fully applicable for RV.
Thank you for that. Suken, do you want to say something? Suken Shetty?
Good morning, sir.
Morning.
Hi, Suken.
Hi, Pooja. I was too excited to come and attend this session. Nice. Nothing much to be added from my side. The experts have already spoken.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any questions from the participants? Please feel free. We have close to 15 minutes to go. We'll try to answer all the questions. Please unmute yourself and ask, or put the question on the chat box. Either of them is permitted.
Dr. Rachna Arora raises her hand. Might be she's having a question.
Can you unmute her? Can you unmute her, please?
Yes, sir.
Dr. Rachna Arora, can you please ask a question or comment?
Good morning, sir. I am from GB Pant Hospital, Delhi.
Sure.
I just wanted to know that, yes, we have read and known so many factors about RV function and dysfunction. But what are the minimum things that we should do prior to and post in a post-cardiac patient so as to assess RV functions? What are the minimum things?
Very good question. Pooja, can you answer that question?
Sure. As the off-pump CABG is the bread and butter of cardiac anesthesiologists, the RV and the RA are very obviously seen on the heart, in the field. So the LV is a little difficult. So visual assessment of RV, I would like to go as the first point. We can as well look at the RV and the PA. So coming to the echo, we can look at the dimensions firstly as compared to the LV, if it's dilated or hypertrophied. Secondly, the TR jet, that also is quite important, and the annulus diameter. So the overall eyeballing of the RV, especially in the fourth chamber and the RV inflow outflow view, how the free wall is moving towards the IVS, I find it very helpful. And the FAC, as I mentioned, in 2D, the FAC measurements are more reliable. But if you have a 3D, well, that would be the best, the volumetric analysis of the RV. So TAPSE intra-op may not be valid because pericardium is open, although post-op also it may not be valid. But the free wall motion is what I consider quite important in assessment of RV.
Yeah, I agree with that response.
Thank you, ma'am.
Anybody? Sanjeev?
Can I add something, sir?
Yes.
Can I add just something to that?
Yes.
So according to the European guidelines, what we do for any case, one should, and for the fellows and students I'm talking, for once you look at the fourth chamber or any of the views, try to look at the RV, try to look at the three walls, whether it's the RV is getting decent longitudinal contraction or decent bellow-like movement or decent septal contribution, distal septum contractility. That's the first thing. Second thing, quickly adapt your eyes to see whether the RV is dilated as compared to LV and the RV is thick-walled or not. And thirdly, the FAC is the must. You may not do other things. You may not do S prime, DPDT, TAPSE. It may be difficult by TOE, but FAC is the recommended method by European guidelines. And at the last, and minimum at the last, you should measure the pulmonary artery systolic pressure. That's a must for RV assessment according to European guidelines. So these are the minimum things you should do.
So if there is no tricuspid regurgitation, do you have any other option to measure the PA pressure or get some idea about the PA pressure with using
there are methods, sir. There are methods. So we can measure the pulmonary acceleration time in the upper esophageal short axis view, upper ascending aortic short axis view. And you can do there's a formula called Nonge formula from which we can get the pulmonary capillary wedge pressure even. And the formula for, that 90 minus 0.62 into pulmonary acceleration time. So by that formula, you get the mean pulmonary artery pressure. But European guidelines tell that, but obviously it tells whether the patient has TR. If the patient doesn't have a TR, RV function looks good, then probably, doesn't make sense. But if there is any suspicion that the patient may have RV dysfunction, particularly if you are dealing with a case of mitral stenosis or regurgitation or some degree of ischemia in the RV, then better to measure the PA pressure if possible. Yeah. But in all the cases, everything may not be possible. That's the fact.
Sir, I would like to add 2-3 practical points which we have to look at in the OT. Firstly, because the right coronary artery is very much in the dependent position. So while coming off bypass, air can go in the RCA. So that can cause severe RV dysfunction. So we should be very careful in de-airing. We should not take it lightly. That's what I feel. Secondly, in cases like ASD closures, where there's a large ASD and we have closed it, we have to keep in mind that LV dysfunction can happen and also RV dysfunction. So although the CVP may look low, we should not be filling the patient post coming off bypass, and always look at the heart. Because otherwise, if it is a severe PAH ASD, it's preferable to leave a fenestration, because RV can fail very easily. And always we have to look at the RV because it is open to us, although we do not have an echocardiography available all the time. And also in off-pump CABGs, the manipulation of the heart using an octopus, we have to make sure the RVOT is not kinked. Then there could be a sudden fall in the pressure. So always manipulating the RV even during off-pump CABG cases and looking at the PA constantly is very important. And so if the RV doesn't tolerate in an OM position, sometimes even opening the right pleura and shifting the heart to a little on the right side will also help, because the RV may not get compressed because of the expanding lung. So all these small practical points I would like to mention.
Yeah. The points are well taken. And any questions from the audience, please? Comments or questions, please feel free. We still have about 8 minutes to go.
Dr. Can I say something?
Yes. Sure, ma'am. Sure.
See, we didn't talk about coronary sinus, which is very important as the judge of
dilated
right ventricular failure or dilation.
Yes.
Another important thing is, if you find pulmonary regurgitation flow, take advantage of that, put CW and measure end and proximal gradient, and you can get mean as well as pulmonary artery occlusion pressure also.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
So, and many times it is always there, PR. Physiologically also. So these two are.
Yes, ma'am. That's very
good. One can go about it.
How can you measure the pulmonary artery RV function in the presence of pulmonary hypertension when the RV is starting to fail and the amount of TR generated is not as much as it should be? So how to go about this problem? How to know the PA pressure?
So in that case, we can look at the PAT values, pulmonary acceleration time, and also based on the pulmonary regurgitation, the early and the late, we can look at the mean pressure and the diastolic pressure. By the formula which I had mentioned, we can calculate.
Yes, thank you for that.
In this case, Dr. Muralidhar, there is a free flow of tricuspid regurgitation. You can see it is a very free flow, no turbulence at all, and RV is dilated. So
yes.
And hardly any gradient is there, that RV has no pumping action to generate any pressure over there.
Right. You're right. 5 minutes to go. Any questions are there? Any comments or questions? Feel free. Dr. Prabhu Shankar is there. Prabhu, would you want to say something? Please unmute Dr. Prabhu Shankar. He is the president of the FCA in Bangalore. Dr. Prabhu Shankar.
Can I ask one more?
Yes,
Sure.
Out of interest, I'm asking this, Pooja.
Yes, ma'am.
What is dead ventricle? Dead right ventricle. It's an entity.
Yes.
Dead right ventricle.
Yes, it is called suicidal RV, ma'am.
Yes.
Yeah, it's also called as suicidal RV. So I have seen in, especially in TOF cases where we do a transannular repair. So there is a free PR which happens. So this long-term free PR can cause this volume overload of the RV. And eventually the RV fails in almost most of the post-TOF children. So nowadays they are looking into putting the conduits as valvular conduits, so the PR component is reduced. So the suicidal RV can, the component can be, cut short in the post-op period.
No, this dead RV is myocarditis, RV myocarditis, where it is very thin and hardly it has any function.
This is post-RV myocardial infarction you're telling, ma'am?
Yes, myocarditis.
Okay, fine.
It is almost dead.
In acute viral myocarditis also it can happen, especially in the current scenario of COVID, where we are looking at ECMOs because of viral myocarditis. True, ma'am.
So in COVID, we get myocarditis, then we have arrhythmias, and also there may be vascular occlusions in the pulmonary vasculature leading to pulmonary hypertension, right ventricular failure. These are the three major issues when we talk about right ventricle COVIDs.
Yes.
So anybody has any experience about COVID and right ventricle? According to me, these are the three major issues: myocarditis, arrhythmias, and vascular occlusion. There is also a sort of pulmonary arteriovenous channels opening up. So there is hypoxemia, which is happy hypoxia, which means that patient's saturation will be down, but patients apparently look well, but they can crash anytime. It's again a feature of COVID involvement of the respiratory system.
And one more thing, we didn't talk about speckle in RV. So if you can
She mentioned about global strain, but
what are the values for left ventricle? What are the values for right ventricle?
Ma'am, my slide is seen?
No, we can't see the slide.
No.
You have to share the screen, maybe share it.
Now also it's not seen?
No, we can't see.
Now?
No. There are no speckles seen on the screen.
Open share. Yes, ma'am. So the stray normal values. So RV global systolic strain, global longitudinal peak systolic strain, if it's less than 20, then we call it as RV dysfunction. So anything more than 29 is considered as normal.
It is minus always.
Minus.
Minus, correct, minus.
So it is more than left ventricle.
Yes, it is more than left because the RV is thin.
So
the movement is better. Yeah.
Pepsi more than Pepsi, just like that.
Arup Ratan, do you want to comment on this?
Yes, so
Right,
honestly, RV strain is not routinely performed or very rarely performed, in fact. And RV strain still has not been validated. And it is still not used in any of the clinical guidelines, either by American Society or the European.
Right.
So I have not used the RV strain anywhere. And because the software, we don't get the software. You can get the TomTech software, which is easily available, but RV strain software, it's difficult to, I mean, it's not validated. People are trying to do that, and the values or whatever you get this, it's from the isolated paper or publication.
Yeah.
So I think the other so far, if you want to look at the gold standard of the RV function, you take the RV ejection fraction by 3D. That's the gold standard for now.
Yes.
And maybe later it will be and because once the LV strain and speckle tracking, these things came, it took some time, and there are 4 types of strains, radial and all these things. So eventually we eliminated all other strains, just kept concentrated on the global longitudinal strain, like for LV. Now for RV, we're trying to do that, but it's not validated. I have no practical experience of the RV strain.
And also there are 2 other important issues. If you may correct me if I'm not right. There is also vendor variability of the values obtained for strain. If you take the Philips or GE or Siemens, the interpretation of the data we get may be different. It is not identical. The other thing is what is applicable to TTE may not be applicable to TEE. So according to me, further investigation is needed to delineate how the strain will be helpful for intraoperative setting. These are 2 points I would like to mention.
Yeah, definitely. The first point, definitely yes, that the values are different in both machines, GE and Philips and Siemens. It's different from machine to machine, but I think they are now coming closer to each other. Initially, started values were very different. Now very much close. Like for LV, we have come to a value like -20.
Yes.
So, but now for RV, we don't know. Yeah, we don't know really.
Just for the participants, the value of -20 is normal for LV. So if when it becomes abnormal, does it become -15 or -25?
Good question.
But I would reply because it's so confusing. Minus, you're talking about minus, and if the LV is worsened, is it -15 or -10, or is it -30? I think it should be -15.
So mostly negative.
Yeah.
-15 and -10 are worse than minus.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's what I would like.
More negative is better. Negative is better.
Well, it is a negative wave on the.
Yes.
Yes. But if
so
you
with
take
that, finish that, Arup.
Yeah, I mean, if you take the transverse strain or the transverse strain, then the positive values are taken, but we don't use it nowadays clinically. So some strains have positive value, some strain has negative value. So some strains like transverse strain, more positive value, better, but longitudinal strain, which is commonly used, like global longitudinal strain, that's more the negative, better LV function. Like we can remember, like if you have corona negative,
more than -20, -25, -30 means LV function
better.
is
better function.
Okay. That's right. So with that, I think it's time for us to conclude so that we can enjoy our Sundays. And thank you everybody for participating. I would like to particularly mention the names of Sanjeevani Namdar, Arup Ratan, Vinayak Desurkar, and Suken Shetty for having been with us, and all the participants. And we would like to continue this Sunday breakfast sessions as far as possible. Please join us and make this program a success. And Dr. Prabhu Shankar is available. If he wants to comment, last comment, we can do that. Otherwise, we'll close this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. It was really a lovely session. I'm for the first time I'm attending this breakfast session. Really very nice. I'll be more happy. More students and fellows, they ask more questions to us.
Your presence will be valuable because we can ask you to comment and answer some of the questions which from your point of view, what is the right thing to do, etc. So please do join us. We will be conducting it regularly, and thank you so much.
It's brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.
Ma'am, thank you all the attendees.